The Andromeda Nebula, a swirling canvas of cosmic dust and nascent stars, served as the unlikely arena for humanity's ultimate trial. For centuries, Earth had listened to the whispers of the galaxy, the fragmented signals of ancient, powerful races who viewed humanity as a quaint, noisy primitive. The whispers turned into focused scrutiny when a Terran exploratory vessel, the Voyager's Ghost, accidentally exited hyperspace within a restricted sector of the Siraxian Imperium. And the Siraxians were not merely another alien race. They were an empire so old that their recorded history predated Earth's primordial oceans. Their sovereign, a being named Xylar Khan, was a creature of immense psychic energy housed in a crystalline exoskeleton. He had crushed 1,000 civilizations, absorbing their knowledge and their fear. When the primitive humans breached his space, he saw it not as an accident, but as an opportunity for a new form of entertainment. When the Terran vessel was tractored into the heart of the Siraxian throne world, a planet of obsidian spires and energy fields that crackled with a sickly violet light. The crew, led by Captain Elias Vance, was marched through corridors lined with the preserved husks of conquered alien generals, their species unknown, their final expressions frozen in eternal terror. They were brought to a vast amphitheater where Xylar Khan himself presided, his form hovering above a throne forged from the compressed core of a dead star. The galaxy watched. Through means humanity couldn't yet comprehend, the proceedings were being broadcast across every major civilized system. The proud Leonids, the stoic Xylos, the avian-like Ravnir, all tuned in. This was a spectacle. The little apes from the forgotten spiral arm were about to be psychologically dismantled by the master of the craft. Xylar Khan's voice was not a sound. He's but a pressure directly against the mind. It was cold, ancient, and dripping with contempt. Primitives, you stand before the culmination of 1 billion years of evolution. Your kind has barely learned to harness the atom, and yet you dare to wander the stars as if you own them. Your ship is a tin can, your weapons are sparks, and your lives are but a fleeting flicker. He projected images directly into the minds of the humans and the watching galaxy. Images of Siraxian might, of star systems being extinguished, of armies so vast they blotted out the light of suns. He showed them the fate of those who resisted. Entire worlds reduced to silent graveyards, their populations turned into psychic echoes, forever reliving their final moments of despair. Your Earth, Xylar Khan continued, his psychic voice dripping with glee, is a quaint little ball of mud. Its cultures are infantile squabbles. Its histories are footnotes. I have seen the birth and death of 1,000 of your Earths, your art, your love, your hope. These are the fanciful dreams of mayflies. We have analyzed your species. You are driven by fear and greed. You fight amongst yourselves over invisible lines in the dirt. You are predictable. You are weak. You are nothing. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The other alien spectators murmured amongst themselves. And this was the classic Siraxian tactic, total psychological domination before a single shot was fired. They expected the humans to cower, to beg, to offer up their planet in exchange for a mercifully quick end. Captain Vance stood at the front of his crew. He was a man in his 50s, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen the cold indifference of space. He felt the psychic assault, the crushing weight of the alien's presence. He saw his younger crew members trembling, tears streaming down their faces. He felt the fear, a primal thing that clawed at his insides. But beneath that fear, something else stirred. A deep, ancestral fire. The same fire that made his ancestors fashion spears from sharpened stones to face saber-toothed cats. The fire that made them build walls around their cities, that made them sail across endless, terrifying oceans, that made them look up at the stars and yearn to touch them. He listened to Xylar Khan's tirade. And he heard the sovereign's insults, his belittling of human art and love and hope. And in that moment, the fear was burned away by a quiet, incandescent rage. Not a hot-headed fury, but the cold, certain anger of a man who has been profoundly disrespected. He looked at the magnificent, terrifying alien, this culmination of 1 billion years of evolution, and saw only a bully, a powerful, ancient, and incredibly arrogant bully. As Xylar Khan's monologue finally wound down, he leaned forward, his crystalline form pulsing with anticipation. He wanted the scream. He wanted the plea. He looked directly at Captain Vance, the presumed leader of this pathetic band. "So, little ape, you have seen our might. You have felt the weight of eternity against your fleeting existence. What do you have to say for yourself? What final words will your species utter before you are added to my collection of failures?" The entire amphitheater fell silent. The billions watching across the galaxy leaned in. The psychic pressure was immense. Captain Vance straightened his back. He looked into the alien's glowing eyes, and in a voice that was not amplified by psychic power, but carried by the simple, profound strength of a human will, he spoke. 2 words. Simple. Unadorned. A direct challenge from a mayfly to a god. "Go ahead." A wave of psychic confusion rippled from the Saraxian throne. Xylar Khan's light flickered. "What?" he boomed, the word laced with disbelief. "What did you say?" Vance didn't flinch. He met the Sovereign's gaze with an unnerving calm. "You heard me. You've given us the tour of your greatest hits. You've shown us your power. You've told us how weak and insignificant we are, so go ahead. Do your worst." It was not a plea. It was not a bargain. It was a statement of fact, a psychological counteroffensive. It was the equivalent of a mouse, cornered by a lion, inviting the lion to pounce. And the sheer illogic of it shattered the Saraxian's rhythm. He had no script for this. He had no psychic template for a species that, when faced with annihilation, responded not with terror, but with a bored, defiant shrug. On the galactic channels, a stunned silence was broken by a single, quiet voice from the Leonid delegation. "Fascinating," the feline-like ambassador purred. "They have no fear of death, or they have a fear so profound it has looped back into something else entirely." Back in the throne room, Xylar Khan recoiled. His psychic probe slammed against Vance's mind, expecting to find a madman, a fool, or a being in utter denial. Instead, he found a wall. Not a psychic shield, but a foundational bedrock of pure, unadulterated human spirit. He saw flashes, not of terror, but of Dunkirk, of the Alamo, of Thermopylae. He saw desperate last stands, hopeless charges, and people facing insurmountable odds, not with despair, but with a grim, determined humor. He saw a species that had stared into its own mortality since it first gained consciousness and had, instead of cowering, built cathedrals, composed symphonies, and fallen in love. You welcome it?" Xylar Khan's voice, for the first time in eons, held a tremor of genuine uncertainty. "I don't welcome it," Vance said calmly. "I just don't fear it. There's a difference. You think 1 billion years of existence makes you powerful? It just makes you old. You've spent all that time perfecting the art of intimidation. We've spent our paltry few thousand years learning how to face things that intimidate us. You threaten to destroy our world? Go ahead. But understand this. We are not like the others you've conquered. You can't break us by showing us our doom. We've always known it was coming. We just decided to make the journey worthwhile." A murmur ran through the human crew. Fear was replaced by a fierce pride. They stood taller. One young ensign, tears still on her face, was now smiling. It was a terrifying smile, a look that said, "If we're going out, we're taking a piece of this crystal jerk with us." The Saraxian sovereign was now on the back foot. He had built his empire on psychic manipulation. His power came from the fear he instilled. But these humans, they looked at him with something that was not fear. It was pity. It was scorn. It was the look of a wild animal that, though trapped, was still dangerous. He lashed out. A psychic blade of pure agony shot towards Vance. It was a physical and mental attack designed to drop a being to its knees in screaming torment. Vance grunted, his face going pale, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. He swayed, but he did not fall. He did not scream. He planted his feet. They grabbed the arms of the invisible chair of his own consciousness and held on. He looked back at the Sovereign, his eyes blazing with pain and defiance. "That it?" he rasped. "I've had headaches worse than that after a bad batch of synth whiskey." The watching galaxy erupted. The Xylos, beings of pure logic, were recalculating. The Ravnir, who valued courage above all else, were practically vibrating with excitement. This was unprecedented. This was a creature that was using pain as fuel. Xylar Khan was panicking. He could feel it. His centuries of control were slipping. He ordered his fleet, the Obsidian Maw, to move. Millions of warships, their hulls black as the void between stars, began to shift, positioning themselves for a strike on Earth. It was a bluff. A final, desperate bluff. He projected the image of the fleet into Vance's mind. "Look, you fool! My fleet is moving. In 1 of your hours, your planet will be a cinder, your oceans will boil, your cities will melt. Your entire history gone." Vance looked at the psychic image. He saw the sheer, overwhelming numbers. He felt the weight of that fleet, a force that could indeed turn Earth into a cinder. And he smiled. It was a slow, weary, but utterly genuine smile. "Go ahead," he said again, the words a soft echo of his first challenge. "But I should warn you. We're a lot harder to kill than we look." This time, the words carried a different weight. They were not just defiance. They were a promise. Unknown to the Siraxians, the Voyager's ghost had not been on a simple exploration mission. Its true purpose was far more significant. Before its disappearance, it had successfully established a rudimentary quantum entanglement link with a network of gravitational observatories on the far side of the moon. These observatories had been watching the Siraxians for years. They had mapped their fleet movements, analyzed their energy signatures, and most importantly, that they had calculated the precise resonant frequency of their crystalline technology. Humanity, for all their perceived primitiveness, had become masters of one thing: finding the chink in the armor. They had learned to listen, and they had heard a whisper in the Siraxian war machines, a flaw, a harmonic instability in the crystalline lattice that powered their ships and their shields. A single, precisely tuned pulse, amplified enough, could cascade through that lattice, turning their invincible warships into glittering, exploding dust. As Xylar Khan fumed and blustered, a lone, unremarkable human freighter, the Irene, was drifting on the edge of the Siraxian system. It was a tramp steamer, a relic from the Martian colonies, crewed by a grizzled captain and his 2 adult children. They were supposed to be hauling ice from the rings of Saturn to the Jovian moons. But when the Voyager's ghost went silent, a different message had gone out. A one hidden in the background radiation of civilian comms. A message that read simply, "If you hear this, find a rock to hide behind and watch the show." The captain of the Irene, a man named Mikhail Volkov, had understood. He had spent his entire life on the fringes, fixing things that were broken, making do with what he had. He had jury-rigged his ship's ancient, massive communications dish. He had bypassed every safety protocol. He had converted it into a weapon, a crude, desperate, but potentially devastating weapon. He aimed the dish not at the Siraxian fleet, but at a specific point in space, the primary energy relay station on the throne world's moon. It was the keystone of their entire planetary defense grid. The frequency was locked into his navigation computer, a string of numbers that had cost the best minds on Earth years to calculate. In the throne room, Xylar Khan had recovered some of his composure. But he saw the defiance in the humans and decided to break it physically. He raised a crystalline arm, ready to order his guards to simply disintegrate the entire crew. Enough of this foolishness. You will die now, and your planet will follow. Your little go-ahead will be your species' final epitaph. He opened his mouth to give the order. Mikhail Volkov, on the Irene, took a deep breath. He looked at his son and daughter, who sat at their stations, pale but resolute. "Well, kids," he said, at his voice a low rumble. "Let's give 'em something to remember." He pressed the single, unmarked button he had installed on his console. A pulse, invisible to the naked eye, shot from the Irene's dish. It was not a weapon of mass destruction in the conventional sense. It was a key, turning in a lock. 1,000 miles away, on the Siraxian moon, the massive energy relay station flickered. The precisely tuned harmonic pulse resonated through its crystalline core. A tiny crack appeared. Oh, then another. The crack propagated following the natural fault lines in the crystal lattice, accelerating exponentially. In less than a second, the entire station was a web of fractures. And then, it failed. The resulting explosion was not nuclear. It was a catastrophic, cascading failure of crystalline energy storage. The moon itself seemed to scream as a violet-white light erupted from its surface, consuming the relay station and sending a shockwave that rippled through the throne world's planetary shields. On the bridge of every Siraxian warship in the Obsidian Maw, alarms blared. Their primary command and control network, linked through the same crystalline technology, began to destabilize. Ships suddenly drifted, their engines sputtering. Weapon systems went offline. Shields flickered and died. The invincible fleet, in the span of a single heartbeat, became a collection of expensive, dead hulks. In the throne room, Xylar Khan felt it. He felt the lifeblood of his empire, his technology, shudder and fail. His own crystalline form flickered, a wave of agonizing feedback coursing through him. He let out a psychic scream that was heard across the entire system, a sound of pure, undiluted shock. He stared at Captain Vance, his form now dim and fractured. What have you done?" Vance looked at the once mighty sovereign, now a flickering, broken thing. He felt no triumph, only a weary sense of justice. "I told you," he said quietly. "We're harder to kill than we look. You spent 1 billion years learning how to make people fear you. We spent a few thousand learning how to survive things that should kill us. We got very good at finding the crack in the armor, the one weak point. You just showed us yours." Across the galaxy, the broadcast continued. The Leonids were on their feet, roaring with a primal approval. The logical Xylos were analyzing the data, like their own strategic doctrines being rewritten in real time. The Ravenir were shrieking with a warrior's joy. They had just witnessed the impossible. A single primitive species, using nothing but wit and will, had neutered the most powerful military force in known space. The other alien races, the ones who had watched in silence for millennia, began to murmur. A new power had just announced itself, not a power of fleets and planets, but a power of spirit and defiance. A power that, when threatened with extinction, simply looked the threat in the eye and said, "Go ahead." The Siraxian Imperium didn't fall that day, but its invincibility did. Its psychological grip on the galaxy was shattered. Xylar Khan, his power base crumbling, was forced to retreat to try and rebuild a technological foundation that was no longer based on a fatal flaw. The human captives were released, not out of mercy, but out of a new and terrifying respect. And they were escorted back to the Voyager's ghost, which was returned with a terse, formal apology. As the Terran vessel limped away from the Syraxian throne world, a young ensign asked Captain Vance, "Sir, were you really not afraid? When he hit you with that psychic blast, it looked like it hurt." Vance leaned back in his command chair, a man carrying the weight of his species on his shoulders. He looked at the star map, at the tiny blue dot labeled Earth. "Oh, I was terrified, son. I was scared out of my mind, and it hurt like nothing I've ever felt." He paused, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "But you can't let them see that. You can't let them know. Fear is their weapon, and the only way to beat a weapon is to take it away from them. We didn't fight them with ships. We fought them with something they'd forgotten existed." He tapped his temple. Guts, pure stupid human guts. The news of the go-ahead incident spread through human space like wildfire, and it became a legend, a rallying cry. Kids on Mars would shout it at each other before playing daredevil games. Politicians would whisper it before signing difficult treaties. Soldiers would carve it into the stocks of their rifles. It was no longer just two words. It was a statement of identity. It was the human answer to a universe that saw them as small and insignificant. It meant, "We see your power. We acknowledge your advantage. And we don't care. Do your worst. It will still be here when you're done." Because we are humanity. We have faced extinction 1,000 times, and 1,000 times we have looked it in the eye and said, "Not today." And somewhere, in the silent depths of space, on a battered old freighter heading home, Mikhail Volkov and his children shared a quiet meal. They didn't think of themselves as heroes. They were just people who did what needed to be done. His daughter looked out the viewport at the distant stars. "Dad," she said softly, "do you think they'll leave us alone now?" Mikhail chewed a piece of synthetic protein, a faraway look in his eyes. "For a while, maybe. They'll need time to rethink things, but others will come. They always do." He smiled, a genuine warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "And when they do, we'll be ready. And we'll say the same thing. Go ahead." The galaxy had just received its first real lesson in humanity. It was a lesson in the power of defiance, and in the strength found in vulnerability, and in the terrifying truth that the most dangerous creature in the universe is not the one with the biggest claws, but the one that refuses to be afraid. The one that, when faced with the abyss, doesn't flinch, but simply steps forward and says, "Go ahead. I've got a story to tell, and it's not over yet."